Hey everyone, there's a phrase that pops up in pretty much every single political debate about government spending, and you've heard it a million times: taxpayer dollars. It sounds so simple, so straightforward, but what if that simple phrase is actually built on a huge misunderstanding of how our government's money really works? Right? This is the line we always hear. Politicians are wasting your hard-earned taxpayer dollars. And look, it feels super intuitive. We pay our taxes, the government gets this giant pot of money, and then it decides how to spend it. But what if that's not really the sequence of events at all? What if we've got it backwards? That's the big question we're diving into today. What if this entire idea of taxpayer dollars is actually leading us down the wrong path? The answer? Well, it might just change how you think about pretty much every public debate from here on out. Okay, so let's dig into the phrase itself. You see, taxpayer dollars isn't just some neutral term. It's what you'd call a frame. It's like putting on a specific pair of glasses that makes you see the entire national economy in a very particular and maybe even a misleading way. The second you hear it, what do you think of? Probably your own budget, right? A household budget. You've got to earn a paycheck before you can go out and pay your rent or buy groceries. This frame makes it seem like the government is in the exact same boat, that it has to collect our money first before it can do a single thing. And that's exactly where the confusion starts. 'Cause the central argument here is that a government that can issue its own currency, like the US dollar, plays by a totally different set of rules than a family or a business that can only use that currency. I mean, just look at this contrast. It's a huge difference. You and I, we're currency users. We have to find money, earn it, before we can spend it. But the government? It's the currency issuer. The source material for this explainer argues that the government actually spends money into existence and then taxes some of it back out. It completely flips the whole script we've been taught to believe. So what happens when we think of the government like a household? Well, it creates this false sense of scarcity. It makes every debate feel like a zero-sum game. We can have better healthcare, or we can have better infrastructure. We can fund education, or we can tackle climate change. It forces us to argue over what we can supposedly afford, instead of focusing on what we can actually achieve with the real people and resources we have. So, if taxpayer dollars is the wrong frame, what's the right one? Well, this brings us to a different concept, a term called public money. Public money is really just the national currency, the dollar, the pound, the yen. The key idea is that it's a public tool. It's created and managed by our public institutions, and it's designed to serve a public purpose. Okay, get ready, because this is the part that can kind of break your brain a little bit. In this view, government spending literally creates new money. And when we pay our taxes, that money is actually deleted from the system. See, money isn't some finite pile the government has to dig into. It's more like a flow that the government starts and then regulates. And when you look at how it actually happens, it's surprisingly straightforward. Parliament or Congress authorizes some spending. Then the Treasury tells the central bank what to do. And finally, the central bank just credits the appropriate bank accounts with new digital dollars. That's it. Notice what's missing there? There's no step where they go check a big vault of tax money. The money is just created. Now, this absolutely does not mean there are no limits to spending. Of course there are, but the limits aren't financial. They're real-world limits. Do we have the people, the skills, the factories, the raw materials to actually do the thing we want to do? Can we do it without causing prices to skyrocket? That's the real constraint. Okay, so this is the big question. I'm sure it's on your mind. If the government can just create the money it needs to spend, then why in the world do we all pay taxes? It's a great question, and this framework actually has a really clear answer. The short answer is taxes have a bunch of super important jobs in the economy. It's just that funding the government isn't actually one of them. According to the source, here are the 4 big reasons for taxes. First, they create a demand for the currency. You have to get a hold of dollars to pay your taxes, which gives the currency value. Second, they're a key tool for managing inflation by taking spending power out of the economy when it's overheating. Third, we can use them to shape behavior, right? Like taxes on cigarettes or carbon pollution. And finally, they help express our national values and reduce extreme inequality. Now, I get it. This is a very different way of looking at things, and it's totally fair to be a little skeptical. So let's actually tackle the 2 biggest objections people usually have. So here's objection number 1. If there's no taxpayer money constraint, won't politicians just spend like crazy on all sorts of wasteful pet projects? That is a really valid concern. But the counterargument is that this way of thinking actually makes accountability even more important. The debate has to shift from a lazy, can we afford it, to a much more rigorous question. Is this a good use of our nation's actual real resources, our people, our materials, our time? Answering that requires more oversight and transparency, not less. And here it is, the big one, inflation. We've all heard the horror stories about governments just printing money and causing economic disaster. So what's the deal? The crucial distinction here is this. Inflation isn't caused by the act of creating money itself. It's caused when total spending in an economy, that's government and private spending combined, outstrips our real capacity to produce goods and services. Too much money chasing too few things. The way you manage that risk is with smart tools, like targeted taxes to cool things down. So let's see how this actually changes things. Take an issue like aged care. The old message sets up a fight. We can't have better care unless you pay higher taxes. The new message says, wait a minute, with public money, we absolutely have the ability to properly staff and equip our aged care facilities. It's a question of priorities, not affordability. Or how about a big infrastructure project like high-speed rail? The old frame immediately gets stuck on the cost. The new frame shifts the conversation to the benefit. What does this investment create? How will it boost our national productivity for decades to come? It's a totally different debate. And that's really the point here. This isn't just about playing with words or some kind of semantic trick. It's about telling a more accurate story about how our money and our economy really work. And when you change the story, you change what people believe is possible for us to achieve together. So I'll leave you with this final thought. How would our national conversations, our priorities, change if we stopped arguing about what we can afford and started focusing on what's actually possible? What could we build if we started from a place of recognizing our true capacity? It's a pretty powerful idea to think about. Thanks for tuning in.